evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stratford Public Schools Finance Committee meeting. My name is Amy Wiltsey. I am the chair of the committee, and I call this meeting to order on Monday, November 28th at 6:30 p.m. We have a quorum, so we will get started with our first item of action, acceptance of our minutes from October 24th's meeting. Can I have a motion?
So,
Okay, first by Ms. Cupie, second by Mr. Proto. All in favor?
aye.
All opposed? Okay, motions from last meeting passed. Thank you very much. Our second item for this evening is our discussion on budget transfers. The first one we have here is budget transfer number 1. I will take a motion to discuss our budget transfer number 1.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, for discussion, our budget transfer number 1, proposed transfer to adjust accounts in Object 111 for various reasons such as resignations, new hires, transfers, and maternity leaves. Further details provided on budget transfer list, and our budget transfer amount is $100,913.45. Dr. Sunday, would you like to speak a little bit more about this, or does anyone have any other questions?
Sure. This is a standard transfer that I think the board is quite familiar with. We've made these kinds of requests of the board in the past. I do have to say, unfortunately, Pam Mangini, our Chief Operating Officer, is out with an ailment today. But if there are any other questions regarding this transfer, feel free to ask.
Mr. Henry?
Yeah, so we had talked about, I think, at some of our last meetings, that this is just an inter-department transfer and maybe not necessarily needing of our approval to do so.
You raised a very good point, Mr. Henrik. We were talking about that just as recently as last week. Since the last meeting, Pam and Jeannie would like to go through a formal process of bringing the policy forward to the board. So there's something on the docket right now that will go to our co-chairs of the policy committee. But as a formality, we can, until that policy is adopted, we wanted to bring this forward to the board. This is a very good point.
That policy states, just for clarification, any transfer over $7,500 comes to the board. So until that's changed. Do you have a question, Mr. Parker?
No, I just,
Okay.
I mean, I was just going to make the suggestion that if we're transferring within the same object code, I'm not sure why. We budgeted for teacher salaries, you were moving from teacher salaries to teacher salaries. It just seems that that should just be something the administration should be able to do. If we're moving from teacher salary to pay for buses, that may be a different concept that we need to have a conversation about.
I think for the purposes of transparency, we'll bring it forward, but in the future, once the board adopts the policy, we'll be able to make those
I think you
adjustments.
should tell us about
And
them.
then certainly notify.
Right, I think we should get a
notify the board and the committee. Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions regarding this budget transfer?
Which goes back to my point of the last meeting as well. I just want to make sure when we're looking at the budget for next year, we see the footnotes, right, of where that money went to. Not that we're hiring 5 more teachers here or 5 teachers just suddenly disappear and stuff like that. So that's the important part of it, because that way we're understanding it. We can all understand it right now. 5 months from now, and looking at the budget, it gets a little overwhelming and stuff.
We did make note of that last request, so
Okay.
we should see those things merge.
And stay tuned, that's about 2 months away.
Yeah, 5 months.
Okay.
I love budget season.
If there's no other questions or comments regarding budget transfer number 1, we will take a roll call vote. Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Proto?
Yes.
Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedell?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mrs. Carol Fabian?
Yes.
Ms. Cupie?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so that's a unanimous pass. Thank you very much. Budget transfer number 2, proposed transfer to clean up year-end balances after late entry from the town, resulting in a need for additional transfers. Total budget transfer amount, $203,527.80. Motion,
So moved.
second?
Second.
Okay, and up for discussion and question regarding this budget transfer.
Can someone from the administration explain this?
Sure. This is, although it comes across as an unusual request, it does make sense to us, okay? A few weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, we received a request from the town regarding our insurance. They made a request for us to make an adjusted entry on our end, and our last fiscal year's end-year balance of $203,527. Fortunately, as it was explained to me by Ms. Mangini, the board is in a position to accommodate this request, okay? Given that we ended our year with a balance of north of 400,000, we are in a position to accommodate this request. It's not the ideal practice, but I do believe that if we're in a position to continue to support our town in ways that we can, we should move forward in that direction. So from my office, the administrative offices, as a recommendation to the board, I do approve this recommendation that we accommodate this request by the town of Stratford.
Mrs. Bedell?
Just to clarify, this is funds that were left over from last year
Last year,
that will be used to cover these funds.
correct. For all
Expenses.
intents and purposes, this serves as a bookkeeping function, and we're in a position to assist.
And do we have something from the town showing this number, or something to, requesting this, a bill or something along
We
those lines?
do. We have email correspondence that was received by Ms. Mangini. It was forwarded to me. We unpacked it, we discussed it. And I did provide a response to the town that we are in a fortunate position to be able to support this. However, if we did not end the fiscal year with the balance that we did, and we ended with a balance that was substantially less than this or equal to this, then it would put the board in a compromising position. Again, we're fortunate to be in a position to help, so it is my recommendation that the Board of Education satisfies this request.
Mr. David?
Yes,
and Mr.
I have a couple questions. One is, I heard a number of over 400,000, so I'll just use that $400,000 number, minus 204,196. So in essence, we have a surplus due to our governance and how we run our business here of 196,000,
That would be the
or
new,
plus.
correct, that would be the new end year balance.
So has any discussion been with the town? Does the town have a surplus on its side as well? And if it, sorry. So let me ask you, do you know if the town has a surplus on it?
My assumption based on this request is that they do not have a surplus, but that is an assumption.
So if that, I'm going to assume since the town looks at the Board of Ed as one line item, that 196 will be used to probably cover other expenses of the town or be put into a special reserve education fund that we have established.
That would be the ideal outcome.
Excellent. And since the insurance for last year was different than they estimated, this year's budget, do we see anything forthcoming where our number is not correct?
For fiscal year 23, or are you talking about?
Fiscal year 22 to 23 right now, because that was for 21, 22, correct? So 22, 23.
Right, so when we begin our budget process, we receive estimations from the town, and that's how we populate our lines here. There was a request in the same fashion for this year, but I clearly communicated to the town that we're not in a position mid-year to respond to such a request. So I don't anticipate an adjustment for this year because we're not in a position. What we do have to do is, as we dive deeper into our budget season, we do have to be prepared for similar discussions to happen. I did send a communication to the town, and I'm awaiting a response, and hopefully we can have some productive conversations to find common ground.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really concerned about the current year because the budget's the budget, as I like to say, but I would like to know fiscal year 23 to 24, what we're looking at, so we can estimate it, and when we do our due diligence and doing the budget, at least we can come up with a good number and not a guesstimate that, Ben and I look at each other and guess a number. So.
Correct. More to come on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Pardo, you had a question?
I am
Denise.
concerned about this year, so, because that request that we're voting on right now was from our year that ended. So you said there's a similar request for this fiscal. If
There
we have,
was, correct.
there was, and we can't use that extra 190 something thousand from last fiscal to help fund this. Is that not an option? If it's in the account with the town, or again, they may have used it already, right? But we can't, right?
I don't think
now.
we could anyways, because that's what we have to go to the special education reserve fund for special education.
But we don't have any money in there. There's no money in
No, I'm
there.
saying, but if there was any money left over, the 196, I'll say that's money, if if the town so if they had extra money and they decided to put it into the special reserve fund, even then, we couldn't use that, I don't believe, for insurance.
Correct.
I don't think that's not the statute.
This would not be a function of the Education Reserve Fund. I think the board has been very clear about trying to get that account funded over the last couple of years. Whatever surplus balance is left, that 196, for all intents and purposes, goes back to the town.
Right.
And they distribute that for their purposes.
Exactly, so my point is if that's available, I guess from an accounting standpoint, we couldn't use it, right? Like for this year, if there is a gap, you know, like a deficit.
I don't want to speak to that
Yeah.
just yet. I think it'd be premature for me to speak to that without
Pam.
having a conversation with Pam and also having a conversation with the town. But I think that's an innovative approach to respond to this fiscal year 23 request.
Mr. Porter, did that answer your question, or do you still have one?
Yeah, my question is, the shortfall, which is basically what it is from last year, is that a result of our failure to budget for it? Is it the result of a premium increase during the year, or is it a result of the town failing to provide sufficient funds during the fiscal year?
Mr. Proto, I believe the best way to answer your question is probably a combination of all 3 or 4 that you just highlighted. Again, at the Board of Education, we set our budget based on projections and estimates that we get from the town. Anything above and beyond that are adjustments that we were not notified about.
Ms. Corcoran?
So, you know, for me, I would like, and I don't think I'm going to get this tonight, but I'd like a deeper understanding of what exactly we're looking at with this number, maybe some sort of a breakdown, because I have to admit I'm not super familiar with our insurance situation with the town of what we split. This is our flood, our property, and our malpractice. Fires.
Workers' comp.
Workers' comp, sorry. Do we have malpractice? But anyway, so if possible, I'd love to have some sort of a breakdown of this number, because I mean, we're essentially looking at a doubling of what we're being asked to pay on the board side. And you know, with that large of an increase, I think that it would behoove us to see precisely what that breakdown is and where the breakdown was, you know, to your point, Mr. Proto, in the communication. Why are we here right now?
Right. Good point.
Can we also get the amounts that we budgeted? The custodial supply line is peanuts. So can we get the budget, the amount we budgeted for 21, 22 for the comp line and the insurance line, the fire insurance line, and the amount we budgeted and what the actual premiums were for that year? I agree with Ms. Quirkman. I think we've got to figure out where the miscommunication came from. I know normally when we do our budgeting, we just normally look at those lines, the insurance lines, we sort of just accept that number. It's not an area that we normally cut. Whatever number we get, we think that's our premium. And we're usually told that we talk to our insurance broker, and the broker has given us the premium for that year.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, there's a roughly $203,000 mistake. And now we're hearing there may be an additional $200,000 or so mistake in the 22-23 budget. And I mean, if we made a mistake, we made a mistake. And if we didn't budget enough money, that's on us. But if we did, somehow the bill simply didn't get paid, then I think that's a discussion for a couple of you to have with some of our friends across the street.
Right, and I don't think that's the case. I don't think we misbudgeted. I think, you know, all the things that are being discussed right now, we have put a request out for. So we're pending for that information to come back, and as soon as it comes back, myself and Ms. Mangini will unpack that and then report out to this committee and the board.
Can I just ask, what is the time frame of expecting to hear back? I know that communication has been sent? And
So I sent the letter before Thanksgiving break. I have not heard or received anything back yet, and to the best of my knowledge, neither has Ms. Mangini. We are obviously at the beginning phases of our budgeting process, and regardless of this situation, I did have it on my to-do list to reach out to the mayor to begin to have discussions with her on the budget process. So as part of that conversation, I'll make it a point to touch on this as well.
I'd like that done for next meeting, Mr. Henry.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the bill hasn't even been finalized yet, so I think we're a little premature for the 192,000, whatever that number is for the
It's too
fire
much.
insurance, but
Too much.
for the repair and maintenance, are we saying we didn't do those repairs and maintenance, or those repairs and maintenance weren't needed?
Oh, you're looking at the
The
breakdown.
The
transfers.
breakdown, I had the breakdown. So that's a full line, and it's possible that that line was not exhausted.
Okay. Would there not the need for repairs, or?
That would be my inclination, given the balance in that line, correct?
So we're saying our schools are 100% up to snuff without need of repair or maintenance?
No, I think that's presumptive. What I'm saying is there was not a malfunction or a break or a maintenance issue that required all of that line to be exhausted.
I mean, well, I guess have to keep that in mind. And looking at these numbers too, and I know there's discussion about the reserve fund. I mean, in essence, we do get that money back because in our next budget, we start from the budgeted number, not from the expended number. So we had a $400,000 surplus last year when we began our budget discussions last year. We started from the budget number, not the expended number. So in essence, we do get that money back in full.
I would ask that you explain that with greater specificity for the understanding of the board.
Okay, so when we set a budget, $1 million, we expect to expend $1 million. We spend $900,000. We have a $100,000 surplus. When we start our budget discussions, we don't start at the number we expended, which is the actual expense. We start at the budgeted number. So that $100,000 is already built into next year's budget, although we didn't need it the year before. So things change. So in essence, we do get some of that money
So I
back.
suppose, I mean, I think it's arguable about whether we didn't use it or whether we couldn't use it. I mean, I know
Or it
a lot
wasn't
of our
needed.
extra funds were that we didn't have disrepair or we couldn't hire staff. So, ideally, we'll be able to hire those staff and have that money should our schools need repairs.
Madam Chair, no,
Sorry.
I do need clarification on that because that's not my understanding. It's based on what we actually spend that we start from. So are you saying the BOE start from what we had budgeted, or that the town, when they're appropriating, they're looking at what they budgeted previously?
So for instance,
Because I
last year
understood it to be actual.
we had a $2 million surplus or deficit in special ed. A bunch of other line items had deficits. Whether it be gas or food or a variety of different items, some of it's based on inability to hire, some of it's based on the fact we didn't need those positions. Sometimes it's because when we look back and we have those positions budgeted, we realize we can get by without them. Dr. Sunday said we found money this year through re-engineering. So as we go through the process and have a number, but at the end of the year for the last, say, 10 years, we've had surpluses. So those numbers that when we started the budget, and typically it's over $1 million, but typically when we start the budget discussion process, we start at the budgeted number, not at the expended number. So,
From my experience doing the budget workshops, we didn't start from the budgeted amounts. We start based on what we actually ended with, like what we spent, and that's when we kind of go from there.
we always start from the
Yeah.
budget. When we get a 2.5% increase, it's based on the budgeted number, not the expended.
Unless you factor
And
in
I'm
NPR.
talking when we're doing our budget for the next year.
And I'm glad that you brought up the 2.5, because I would like everyone to be clear that this past legislation, Stratford is now the only town in the state of Connecticut with an MBR exemption. So we could be very, very clear as an alliance district that needs it most to get 0%. So let's just be very, very honest and clear when we're looking at budgeting and keeping all things in line. Stratford doesn't have to do much for the Board of Education. So,
But they,
Mrs. Corcoran.
I would just like to bring it back to the insurance piece of this, in that, does this also, so just to confirm, So we're looking at next year's budget, instead of a $220,000-ish for insurance, we're looking at $420 plus a 5% boost.
Correct, based on the
So
information that.
so as we budget for next year, that's a significant hardship, I suppose, looking at.
So one of the things I would caution our Board of Education and this committee is not to make any premature judgments. We have a few data points that are on our desk right now. We need to bring the other half of the party to the conversation before we start to have deliberate, more targeted discussions about our next steps around this. There's probably about 50% of the information that this board still needs to have in order for us to make informed decisions.
So I would make a motion to table
I'm
this
sorry,
transfer then.
Miss Carol Fabian had a question.
I don't know that she was recognized by the chair, but.
I did before Mr.
Oh, I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Sunday. I
I'm sorry,
did.
you're the chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking Andrew. I bet.
However,
so go ahead.
if you don't mind me saying,
No, that's
however,
okay.
my recommendation is that we still move forward with this, this motion, okay? I think as we start to think about fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24, we need to be a little bit more intentional about having those conversations with the town, so we're all on the same page.
All right, so I guess I do have several questions. I'm sure that probably it would be best for Pam to answer, but I wanted to just get those out there, and if you can answer, that'd be great.
Sure.
If not, maybe I can send an email and she can get back to all of us with some of these answers. So from my understanding, right, we carry our own insurance for certain items, right?
Certain items.
And then the insurance coverage that we pay into the town for covers property, flood, and workers' comp.
Correct, and fire.
And fire. All right. So I guess my question is then, the town gets these policies, right? And then they determine how much the Board of Ed is to contribute.
Correct.
Okay. So do you know the percentage that the Board of Ed contribute, how the percentage that the Board of Ed contributes is determined?
I don't, and that's the information we requested, that Ms. Wiltsey, our chair, just referenced. So we're pending that feedback from the town. As soon as we have that information, we'll get that to the committee and the board.
My next question is kind of along those same lines. Can we get a breakdown of the allocation for each of those insurances? And then is this proper, like when we talk about just like the property insurance, obviously that's insuring all of the buildings in the town. Do we get like a cost breakdown by building?
Writing
Right.
it all down for Pam.
Okay. And then, I think that's it.
Okay, all good questions that we'll get to Pam. Mrs. Corcoran?
Because I did ask Pam outright, if with this particular budget transfer, is it just bookkeeping? Is it simply bookkeeping? Because I agree that as we look forward to, anything having to do with this year's budget or next year's budget, I think that requires a deeper conversation. But if it is simply a bookkeeping issue, on this point, then.
And her answer was?
Her answer is yes,
Yes.
it's just bookkeeping. It's just.
Mr. Pardo?
One quick question, then I'll second Mike's motion to table. I think he's correct on that. My understanding is our workers' comp is billable to us separately because we are a separate employer from the town. Our employees work for the Board of Education, not for the town of Stratford.
Correct.
The town owns all the buildings and therefore insures all the buildings. So as I looked at the budget from 2021, 2022, we had a $716,000 line item for workers' compensation that we expended. So my question goes back to, did we not budget enough? And if so, we should have our own invoice for workers' comp for 21, 22, and for 22, 23. So I'd like to see those for next meeting, please.
Very good.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So so it's my understanding, again, that this is, we're looking to budget for a bill we don't have for the fire insurance. But, so we're requesting that the town refund us
No,
part
no,
of
no.
our surplus? Where is this money?
No.
We're
So-
just
But to be clear, this budget transfer that's on the table for discussion for us to vote on is a portion of what our surplus was at last year's fiscal end. The town has requested be earmarked, journal entered to cover insurance expenses. So the 400 that we sent back to the town, they're looking for the 202, 527.80 to be allocated to expenses incurred with insurance.
From that balance.
So it's
And we have
a
a written
bookkeeping,
request from the town?
yes,
We do.
from Ms. Sabo.
Can we see that at the next meeting then, too?
Of course.
Yes.
So, I would,
Yeah,
just to finish it,
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
well, I'll let the discussion finish and then I'll seek to table it.
Yeah.
Mr. David?
I don't think we should table it, and this is why. The ship's already sailed. It's just a journal entry at the end of the day. The budget's been done. They could do whatever they want with that $400,000. It's the town's money. So if they want to put it in the special reserve fund, they can do that. If Department X or Department Y, I once made an example of a department who got in trouble for that. Department X or Y spend too much money, the town could shift the money. They look at the Board of Ed as one line item. If there's extra money, the money can go to pay other departments. If there's not enough money, they got to go to other departments to fulfill the Board of Ed's needs. So just keep that in mind. They look at it for one thing, and I don't think we should table it tonight, just FYI.
Thank you, Mrs.
In response to that, Mr. David, if they're coming to us to look for, why are we being asked for that if we've already handed that money back to the town?
Because it's a required journal entry, it's a bookkeeping, it's a necessity in accounting.
It's a bookkeeping function, and based on the conversation I had with Pam and Jeannie, our auditors are aware of this, and they're fine with it.
It's an audit thing. That's exactly what it is, Chris.
I don't.
In the world of accounting, it's called journal entry, just.
I get it's all make-believe money at this point, moving numbers around in a journal, and I understand what Bob's saying, but I think in order to do this, and we're going to be asked to do this for the current budget year, that the information is needed for us to have in front of us so that when people ask, we say, here it is. And oftentimes, a lot of these transfers come to us with just the notation as to what it is. And I think this is one where we need to see the backup because it does concern me. I get the fire insurance, it's not our bailiwick, we don't do that. We do our, as I understand it, our own comp, and that concerns me that we were off by that much. And it sounds like we may be off in the current fiscal year. And if so, that's, shame on us for messing that up.
Again,
So we don't know the
that's,
breakdown,
with the fire, we receive estimates, right, numbers from the town, and that's how we budget for that.
Right.
The workman's comp, I'll connect with Ms. Najini to get a little bit more specified information in that to share with the board. Two things, there's three different things here, right? So the past, to use your words, play money, it's no longer the board's money, right? We can accommodate. The request, as it applies to this fiscal year, is undoable, and I've already been clear about that with the town. As we start to budget for next fiscal year, 23-24, that's where we need to focus a significant amount of this committee's energy and the board's energy in collaborating with the town to make sure that we're all on the same page around those numbers. So there's more work to come on that.
We all set?
Should make a motion to table?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote for motion on the floor to table this. Mr. David?
No.
Mr. Proto?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Ms. Vidal?
Yes.
Mr. Henry? Oh, sorry, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran?
No.
Ms. Carol Fabian?
No.
Ms. Kippy? And chair votes no. So we do the math, that's 5-4.
Motion goes.
Motion fails. So we shall move forward with the motion to transfer number 2, budget transfer number 2, proposed transfer to clean up year-end balances after late entry from the town resulting in the need for additional transfers. Total budget transfer amounts $203,527.80. Mr. David.
Yes.
Mr. Proto.
Yes.
Mr. Henry.
No.
Mrs. Bedell.
No.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Ms. Carol Fabian.
Yes.
Ms. Cupie.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we will take it to financial reports. Like Dr. Sunday said, Ms. Mangini is not here. Do you have her report to share with us?
Yes, the board did receive the packet and she explained a few things. You had a chance to review that. She is, based on the conversation I had with her today, she reports to me that we are trending in a positive direction and we will continue to monitor each line.
Does anyone have any questions regarding Ms. Mangini's report? Okay, grants update, Dr. Clemmie.
Good evening. As of October 31st of this year, we've had $21 million in grants under management and a little spare change beyond that. That number increased as a result of 4 new grants we received in October. Not brand new, except for Alliance was brand new. Finally got that officially confirmed. The bilingual grant that we get every year came in, and IDEA and the IDEA preschool grant both came in October. Also, we know, not till November, so I didn't put it in this report, but Title I, Title II, and Title III have all been approved by the state. And the Parents Trust Fund, which funds the Parent C program at Stratford Parents Place, has been approved by the state. So those will all show up on your report next time. For November here, we have 2 more grants in progress. We have one for from the state for the hiring of mental health workers. We're going to request to add 1.5 nurses to our payroll using those funds for the next 3 years. And we have an HVAC grant going into the state to replace the chillers at Flood Middle School, which are at the end of their useful life. And that's a quick and simple report for today. Any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Clemmie? Oh, excuse me.
So I'll start off by just, thanking you for all the hard work you do on securing these funds.
My pleasure.
I'm going to start making sure I compliment before I ask for things. So just circling back to a question I had a while back, just are we looking into art-related grants?
So I'm unaware of any grants that specifically are aimed at art that we could be looking into. We consider art, music, etc. as a possibility whenever we write grants that give us leeway within the academic subjects. And in fact, we've recently purchased a bunch of musical instruments using the Alliance funds. And our art coordinator, Amy Boyle, comes to me regularly with, we need this and we need that, and can we add this to these rooms? And to the extent that we can accommodate within our ESSER instructional supplies, we do that as well.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Clemmie? Thank you. And special education PPS report, Ms. Borges?
Hi, everybody. As Dr. Sunday said, we are tracking on budget right now. Just some quick updates for you. Your sheet says 1,222 students with exceptionalities. We actually are now up to 1,224 students with exceptionalities. We have 90 students that continue to be outplaced. We have 67 current referrals to special education, and then we also have an additional 38 birth to 3 referrals. That's only through December for birth to 3. Okay, so those are the birth to 3 referrals that these children will turn 3 before December 30th that we are currently in the process of evaluating and finishing up. So that's kind of just to give you a perspective of where our special education numbers are. But budgetarily, after the adjusted budget with the transfers from last time, we are tracking on budget in each of the accounts.
Okay, wonderful. Good news, Mr. Hahn.
Just, in the future, when you give us the 300 professional services and tell us how many kids we're servicing, could you tell us how many kids we serviced the previous month?
Sure. I can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
So, line item 560, the budget item, we have $650,000 balance in that. Is our budgeted number or our expended number based on year-end tuition for the 90 outplaced students, or?
So remember, Mr. Henrik, last year we budgeted for 106 because that's what we had. So I always budget for what we have.
Sure.
Because students returned, right now that is what you're showing. That doesn't mean that next week we might have 4 more kids outplaced. But currently, yeah, that would have been the budgeted number we had for the original 106.
All right, so the original budget number was based on last year's numbers.
Yep.
We currently have 90.
Yep.
And that dollar amount of 9.7 million will cover the expenses of those 90 students?
Yes.
To the end of the year?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But if there's more students.
Absolutely.
Right.
Sure.
Or if an out-of-district placed student needs an additional support.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great, thanks, Ms. Borges. Back to food Services report, Dr. Sunday.
Again, we are trending in the right direction. We have over $1 million in balance. Things are going well.
Mrs. Corcoran.
Can we just reiterate, so everybody knows, when do our free lunches? And I'm, as a mom, super sad to have to start buying lunch again. But what do we have, I know the date, but do you want to tell us the date?
We run all the way through December and I believe a handful of days into January.
No, I thought it was December 23rd.
December
We sent that
23rd.
communication out. Is it the
The
23rd?
23rd. Yeah. And by the way,
Let's go with whatever was sent out.
and if I could just say, I think your office is doing a very good job over communicating with parents
Yes,
on
sir.
that. You can't over communicate that enough. So I
Yes.
think doing the same work over and
So
over.
be prepared after holiday break, January 3rd.
At the schools that are not.
And even
At the schools
longer,
that
you're
are
still
not-
going to get 10
yes.
complaints that I get reviewed.
That's right. you're right.
January 2nd.
You're right.
And I want to, I do want to give Pam and Jeannie a heavy amount of credit around this work and her work with the state on this. They've gone back and forth a couple different times and she's done a great job of keeping us here in Stratford updated on this work and certainly our families as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And then item C, it's still on Dr. Sunday for enrollment registration
Well,
status.
you all can call me, Bowie or Sunday Man Jeannie today. But our numbers are static. As of right now, our enrollment is the same as it was in the previous month.
Any questions regarding enrollment and registration? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, it is 7:05 and a lot sooner than I thought we would end. I will
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Motion to adjourn, 7:05.